As you guys know, Jake Paul was in a major boxing fight last night against a former champion, and it was a split decision that resulted in Jake Paul with the win. Now, a lot of people thought that was very controversial. Obviously, with almost anything that the Paul brothers do, it is controversial. However, there is a lot of articles circulating on social media that I think they need more respect put on them and also more attention, because this is something that I've talked about quite a bit with you guys on my YouTube channel, as well as this podcast, Talks with Taylor Hendricks, where I talk about gender gaps in pay in multiple different avenues in industries, and the gaps in pay aren't just towards women either, they're also towards men. And a lot of times when you see like people that have like supposed superstar status in combat sports and sports and entertainment, you don't actually realize that a lot of times they're broke. They're working more jobs than a lot of the average person that has a regular 9 to 5 and 8 to 6 job, which is nuts, let's be honest, it's nuts. It's crazy, right? Especially with how much you have to put into dedicating yourself to your sport and your craft to get somewhere in that particular industry. It's crazy. So Jake Paul made a point of calling out Dana White once again. And earlier this year, he advocated for UFC fighter Sarah Alpar, who couldn't afford her training for her fight. So Jake Paul actually donated to her GoFundMe and had one of his former agents do the same thing, and they ended up helping raise over $30,000, which is more than the goal, for her to be able to train for her upcoming fight, where these athletes put their lives on the line. You know, a lot of these things go wrong in pro wrestling, in sports entertainment, in combat sports like UFC, boxing, MMA, you know, all these crazy combative sports. It is a risk. So I thought that was very cool that he did that. And what was different about this most recent event with Jake Paul and highlighting the bout was the fact that all of the people on this card, because of Jake Paul taking a paid cut, got some of their best pays of their life on that card. And he made a point of saying that if he is going to main event, he felt it sickened him that he kept hearing Amanda Serrano talking about being on this card, and he felt that she deserved more than just talking about being on the card. And so he made it a point to campaign for her to actually be the co-main event on this card. A woman who's been in the boxing industry for over 12 years, has had over 40 fights, 9 different titles, and has been in 7 different weight classes. Like, that's a true badass right there. So it was really cool seeing him advocate for more pro athletes in combat sports to be paid more. So we're not just talking about women, we're talking about the men too, and that was all thanks to Jake Paul. So a lot of the articles that are coming out about this exact subject are calling him, you know, the unlikely hero, and I think that that's very true. I think this wasn't something that people expected of Jake Paul, but Jake Paul and Logan Paul have very humble beginnings, so I'm surprised but not surprised, because they still, even though they've come so far from where they came from, they never lost touch of where they did come from. And that's something that I've always personally held very dear to my heart, is no matter how successful or how much backlash I get, what have you, positive, negative, so forth and so on, no matter what project I'm doing, I always try to stay grounded and balanced and try to remember where I came from and why I fell in love with what I'm doing and my motivation for doing whatever it is that I am doing and dedicating myself to. And I feel like this was very much indicative of a very similar mindset of equality for everyone, not just men, not just women, but everyone, and more respect for the athletes themselves who are in combat sports competing for our entertainment and putting their lives on the line. So it was really cool to see that a lot of them are actually getting some of the best paydays of their career, and rightly so, with how much training. In 2018, Amanda Serrano herself actually had an interview in a sports magazine, I think it was, where she actually talked about how she couldn't, you know, survive on, you know, just the training. She had to have not just a regular 9 to 5 job, but she also had to have side hustles as well, just to make ends meet so that she could potentially train to compete. And that's a lot of pressure. And you don't really get to be the best performer that you can be when you have to do all of those things to be able to compete. So I think this is going to be, fingers crossed, I think this is going to be a huge step in the right direction that I hope transfers into the pro wrestling world, because as you guys know, I've talked about this quite a bit. From my time on the Independents, which a lot of people think I'm retired, and I laugh because it's like, no, I never officially retired, guys. Where's my retirement announcement? Where did I say this? But anyways, I digress. My time on the Independents, my time on television, and my time being an independent contractor working for television company people that are televised, I've noticed a lot of ups and downs. So for example, like when I'm on the indies, I see a huge gender gap in pay where the men get paid a lot less than a lot of the women. And then when you go to television, it seems like it's the opposite. The women get paid less than the men. So there are gender gaps in pay on both sides. But I also think it also comes down to a business perspective as well. Who's selling more tickets? Who gets more eyeballs in their demographic and ratings for TV? Who do the sponsorships that are helping put the money into the company that you're working for? Who do they want to see? Who do they want to put their money in? Who's bringing in the money, which is necessary for a company to, you know, keep growing and prospering and provide jobs for people like me and other wrestlers. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I hope this will be a step in the right direction for a lot of athletes all around the world. So fingers crossed.